Are you a beginning crocheter or think you can only crochet granny squares or scarves? Then this is an easy pattern for you. Welcome to Lil John's Yarns. If this is your very first time here, I take beginner crocheters into advanced stitches, so make sure you click the subscribe button and the notification bell. This pattern is created by making a simple rectangle. I give pattern suggestions for all sizes in the tutorial, but if you're following my pattern exactly, I'm considered a size large. My measurements are 38, 32, and 43. To help support this channel, download the PDF written pattern. I'll leave the link in the description box below. The stitches we'll be using for this tutorial are the chain stitch and double crochet, and the materials will be 4 skeins of Caron Simply Soft, a worsted weight yarn, and a 5mm crochet hook. If you enjoy making crochet clothes, make sure you check out Naturally Danielle and Chasing Sunray and subscribe to their channels. Alright, let's hop into the tutorial. Here are timestamps so you can quickly jump to sections of the video. We're going to begin by making a chain of 136. And once you have your chain of 136, we're going to slip stitch to join into the very first chain. Make sure your work is not twisted. So slip stitch to join, and your ring is formed. You'll notice my work is a little bit smaller than yours because I'm working with a sample piece. But make sure you do your total of 136. Alright, we have that. So now we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Your chain 3 will count as a double crochet. We're going to place 2 more double crochets into the very same space. 1 and 2. So these 3, I'm going to call this from a cluster from here on out, your 3 double crochets. Now we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, because this is going to be considered a corner, so we're always going to chain 2. And we're going to place another cluster into the very same space. So that is 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. So we have that there. So now we're going to chain 1 and skip 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and place a cluster into the 4th stitch. 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Skip 3 stitches again and place a cluster into the 4th. 1, 2, 3, 4. And cluster. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. We're going to repeat this sequence 12 more times. So pause your video here and complete placing clusters all the way up your work by chaining 1, skipping 3 stitches, and clustering into the 4th. So I'll meet you there. Okay, you should have completed your additional 12 more clusters. That'll be a total of 14 single clusters going up the side of your work. So now we're going to be working on the next corner. So skip your 3, 1, 2, 3, place a cluster into the 4th. 1, 2, and 3. Since we're working a corner, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and cluster into the very same stitch. So that is 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. And now we're going to be working into the quote-unquote side part of your rectangle that we're making. So we're going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and place a cluster into the 4th stitch. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Now we're going to be working another corner just like this one. So skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to do your corner stitch into the 4th. So place your cluster into your 4th stitch. 1, 2, 3, and because this is considered a corner, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and cluster once again back into the very same stitch. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. So this will be our rectangle, corner, corner, side. And now we're just going to place singular clusters going down the other side of your work. So we're going to place 14 clusters going down the side. We already chained 1, so skip 1, 2, 3, cluster into your 4th. 1, 2, and 3, chain 1. Okay, we're going to repeat that sequence going all the way down for an additional 13 more clusters. This is number 14 that you just completed. So pause your video here, continue chaining 1, skipping 3, cluster for an additional 13 more times. I'll meet you at the end of your clusters. Okay, we completed those additional 13 more clusters, and now we're going to be working on our very next corner. I already chained 1, so we're going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and place your corner clusters into your 4th stitch. So begin with just a regular cluster. 1, 2, and 3. And since this, since this is a corner, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and cluster back into the very same space. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. And now we're back working on this side again, just like before. Skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and cluster into the 4th. Remember, my work is a sample piece, so it's going to look much smaller than yours. This is the 2nd double crochet. And here is the 3rd double crochet. Chain 1. And we're going to slip stitch to join into the top of your chain 3 stitch. And I'm going to show you a quick tip on how to slip stitch and weave in your ends all at the very same time. This won't be in the written pattern. So slip stitch into the top of your chain 3, slip stitch, and now slip stitch over into the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. You should end up in your chain 2 space. If you're using the same color, this is a great way to start the next section, but if you're changing, we are going to fasten off our work. And by slip stitching over, I weave this into all these stitches right here, so I don't have to worry about cutting this later. So here is what your work should look like. Like I said, once again, yours is going to be much bigger because I did a smaller swatch. But you have a corner, corner, your side works, and corner. So you should have 14 double crochet clusters going up each side of your work, your single ones, and a singular double crochet cluster right in the middle, and a singular double crochet cluster right in the bottom middle of your work. So next we're going to move on to adding an additional color for your next row. From here on out, the rest of your work is going to be created just like a normal granny square. So we're going to attach our new color to any chain 2 space. And so I don't have to worry about weaving in my ends. I tie my knot right around the previous row's knot to secure it. And I leave this tail a little bit long. Alright, and we're going to begin by chaining 3. But like I said, this is a quick tip on how to weave in your ends, so watch closely. I pull up a loop, and I take that tail and this new strand, and I'm going to begin my chain 3 with both strands. 1, 2, now that strand is short, 3. This is already weaved in. That's how I weaved in my ends. So now we're going to work that corner again. We're going to place 2 double crochets back into this very same space, and we're going to work over top of this strand here. 1 and 2. Since this is a corner, we're going to chain 2. 1, 2, and we're going to cluster back into the very same space. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Up, and for those who are weaving their ends, this little piece here from your previous row, you can just chop off. And the little pink piece, chop off. There you go. My work is completely weaved in as I go, so I don't have to worry about doing that later. Alright, so you got that quick tip. Let's hop right back into the pattern. So I already chained 1, and we're going to be working on the sides. To do that, we're just going to place a cluster into the very next chain 1 space. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1 and cluster into the next chain 1 space. We're going to continue placing a chain 1 cluster into each one of your chain 1 spaces until you make it into your corner. So you can pause your video here, and we'll pick up when you make it to the very next corner. Okay, we've made it to the corner, which is the chain 2 space, and we're going to place another corner stitch right into that. So we're going to place our cluster. 1, 2, 3, chain 2 since it's the corner, 1, 2, and place the cluster right back into the very same space. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Now we're just going to place a regular cluster into each one of the next chain 1 spaces. So a cluster here and just a singular cluster there. 1, 2, 3, chain 1. I'm going to speed up a little bit and place another cluster right into the next spot. 1, 2, and 3, chain 1. And since we're at the corner, remember, we're going to do a cluster, chain 2 cluster in each one of your corners. So you're going to repeat this sequence all the way around your work. So pause your video here, and for each corner you're going to do a cluster, chain 2 cluster, and for each one of your side spaces we're just going to put a single cluster, chain 1 cluster in each space. So pause your video here, and I'll meet you at the completion of this row. Okay, we've made it back to the other side, and oops, I forgot to chain 1. And we're going to slip stitch to join into the top of your chain 3 stitch to finish off your row. And like I said, if you want to do the little weaving as you go trick so you don't have to worry about your ends later, just slip stitch across. Alright, we're going to repeat this exact row sequence for an additional 14 more rows. So you can pause your video here and complete an additional 14 more rows. And if you find that you need a bigger size, try the garment on around your neck and see if you need to add additional more rows, or if you're smaller, make fewer rows. Alright, I'll meet you at the completion of all of your rows. To adjust for your exact size, place the garment over top of your head. and your opening will splay to the side slightly. As you can see with the green arrows listed, this will be the length of your sleeve. So stop increasing when you find the perfect length that you desire. Alright, we'll hop back into the rest of it. Here's what it looks like as you build upon your rows. Okay, what we're going to do now is take our work and we're going to fold it in half. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but there is the top and here is your bottom. Make sure you're working on the wrong side out. And what we're going to be doing now is seaming up the sides. So I'm just going to pause the video here and give you a better view on what we'll be working on next. Okay, what you're looking at right now is the very bottom corner of your work. Here is the neck, and we're working down here on the corner. We're going to take the same color yarn and attach it to the chain 2 spaces. So let's do that together. And you can either sew this part, or what I'm going to do, since I can't find my needle, I'm just going to slip stitch to join the whole thing. So I'm going to go in, match stitch for stitch through the front and back and slip stitch. Front, matching stitch back, and slip stitch. Make sure you're doing this pretty loosely so your work won't be puckered. Front, back, and a very loose slip stitch. And don't forget your chain 1 spaces also. We're going to continue placing slip stitches all the way up your edge into about the end of your 9th cluster. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9th cluster up, and that'll leave a nice arm opening. And if you chose to use a different size, try it on and see where you would like your arm opening and what looks best on you. Alright, so pause your video here. Continue placing slip stitches up your side, about 9 clusters up, or whatever according to your size. Okay, once you're done seaming up both sides, you can leave your top as it is. It'll be like a cute little crop top or shorter top, or you can continue adding more rows to the bottom of your work to make it slightly longer. So that's exactly what you're looking at right now, is the bottom of your work. Here's the sides we just seamed up, and we're just going to add more length to it. So you can attach your yarn to any one of the chain 1 spaces. Remember, I like to leave my little tail long so I can have some extra yarn to weave in as I go. We're going to begin by chaining 3. Now remember, to weave in as I go, I chain with this one, the extra tail of my work. 2 and 3. Now that's woven into my work, and I'm just going to cut it off later. So continue placing the cluster back into the chain 1 space. Well, that will just be 2 more double crochets. 1 and 2. And we're going to chain 1 and cluster in the next chain 1 space. 1, 2, and 3, and chain 1. We're going to repeat this sequence all the way around. So chain 1, cluster into the next chain 1 space all the way around, and I'll meet you back at the other side. Okay, we've made it back around to the other side, and we're just going to slip stitch to join in the top of your chain 3 stitch. And my little weaving as you go trick, I'm just going to slip stitch into the next 3 stitches and fasten off my work. And just like the previous row, I am just going to add my new piece of yarn. and chain 3 to start. And we're just going to repeat the same exact row as we did last time by chaining 3 and placing 2 double crochet to form your very first cluster, and chain 1 cluster, chain 1 cluster into each one of your chain 1 spaces, and continue doing as many rows until you get to the length that you like. I completed an additional, other than this one, an additional 4 more rows to get the length that I like. So pause your video here and complete the bottom part of your top. Okay, what you're looking at right now is the neckline of your top, and this section is completely optional. You do not have to do this. I just wanted to do it because it made the top look a little extra special. So if you like to do that, let's work this next section together. As you can see, we're going to locate the first row. You can see you have your corner right here and your corner right here. So these will be your matching sides. We're going to go 1 cluster from each side. So 1 cluster here, and 1 cluster on your opposing side. And let's smush these 2 seams together. And what we're going to do, attach the yarn, and we're just going to slip stitch up your work, or you can sew up your work. The yarn is attached. We're going to go in through the very next cluster. You see how there is a little, let me zoom in a little bit, hole right here? We don't want to enter in through that because that'll make your work, it'll create a gap in your work. So place your hook in between your double crochet clusters and do the same on the exact other side. Place it not in this hole but between your double crochet clusters and slip stitch, and slip stitch into the next space. We're just going to evenly place those up your seam. Alright, when you make it to the next cluster, which will be your corner, you see how there's cluster, space, cluster. Once again, we're not going to go into that hole. We're going to go in between the 2 clusters together. Hope that makes sense. Here's the 2 clusters together. We're going to go through both of those. Now up through the next one, not through this hole, but in between your clusters, and slip stitch. And we're just going to finish off the row by placing your slip stitches in, and you can fasten off your work. And your top is done. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And check out my other crochet clothings and videos. Alright guys, I'll see you all on the next tutorial.